Good evening, and welcome to the final in our wee mini-series, A Blether wi Heather. Cheers, Abdi, for tuning in thus far. We hae a stoter a guest to finish us off this week. It is Ashley Douglas. She's a multilingual translator, or in Scots an oversetter, who has contributed to a new Scots collection of Hans Christian Andersen tales, among hundreds else. Ashley, welcome.
Cheers, Alex. Welcome to everyone, and for your kind words there.
Hey, bother. So we didn't have that much time, so the evening we're going to chat about your oar-setting work, the stuff you've been working on most recently, but also what I'm fascinated in is your work producing loads of stuff about Scots history in Scots. So let's start. You're part of a kind of gathering of Scots scravers from many different earths in Scotland that have come together to produce a muckle collection of Hans Christian Andersen tales in Scots. Tell us more about the project.
Aye, so it's a gay exciting project. As you said, we're bringing out the Wheel Kent fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen in Scots for the first time. So it's Itchy Coo are the company a hint at, and folk might ken they've already brought out Scots our settings like the Gruffalo in Scots, Harry Potter in Scots. And this book is the first in a newer project to ever set more of the classic fairy tales and fables into Scots. And I think it's absolutely brilliant that we're bringing out more Scots books for bairns these days, because it's so important that Scots speaking bairns see the language they speak written down and have positive engagement with it as early as possible. Because if we've seen one thing over the last few years, it's that the transformational impact that working with Scots in schools can have on the academic achievement of bairns, and just as importantly on their self-confidence. So the more quality books we have in Scots for bairns, and the more bairns have positive engagement with their mother lead, the better. So this is just the latest book and that trend that we're seeing. So I'm guy pleased to be part of that.
Aye, you say trend, it certainly is that, especially with Itchy Coo. It wasn't a lang sign that you could ging into a bookshop or online and basically buy all the modern books in Scots for under a tenner. Now there's a whole kind of kist being bigger up, a lot of that through Itchy Coo. So tell us about this project specifically. How come you were keen to do it?
Well, as you said at the start, I'm a multilingual setter. So as well as working with Scots, Danish is actually one of the main leads I work with. And that is, of course, the original language of the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales is in Danish. So if I take you all the way back to 2014, I was in Danish in Odense, which is where Hans Christian Andersen was born. And I can vividly mind being in the museum about Hans Christian Andersen there and reading all the hundreds of thousands of leads that his tales have been ever set into, and Scots wasn't there. And I can mind being guy sad about that. So 6 years on, it's absolutely smashing to be part of changing that on and allowing Scots to take its place. Better late than never among all the other languages of the world. And what always strikes me when I'm working in Danish is the many similarities between Scots and Danish. Scots and Danish sharing, of course, like a Old Norse heritage. And best example of that, just quickly for here, is when Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales first came out in the 1800s. They're called Eventyr fortalt for børn. So Eventyr is just like adventures or fairy tales. But then the fortalt for børn part, I think even if you've not got any Danish at all, as a Scots speaker, it sounds awfully like telt for bairns, does it no? Fortalt for børn, compared to the English like told for children. So we immediately see there, when you put Scots next to its European neighbour languages, you see immediately, one, how different it is from English, and two, how it is just part of this family of European languages. And again, going back to the schools context, what we have in Scotland is essentially hundreds of thousands of bilingual bairns. How many bairns across Scotland, they speak Scots and they speak English, they understand telt for bairns the same way as they understand told for children. And at the moment, we didn't recognise that enough, and we didn't big on that enough. But the more books we have like this, the more we're getting Scots bairns to think about how Scots relates to other languages, the better. And I'll keep coming back to this point. That's as much about academic achievement as it is about the self-confidence and the self-worth of those bairns to learn early on Scots as a language. It's no slang, it's no dialect, it's no something you need to get learned out of you at school. It's something that we need to cherish and promote.
That is obviously dead inspiring. One of the things I like about this collection that's been put together by Ichiku is that there's a good dozen or so different writers. More of them are Wheel Kent, but more of them aren't Wheel Kent as Scots writers. Can you tell us, can you give us a flavour of a couple of the names and what sort of differences in Scots we see in the collection?
Aye, absolutely. So, I mean, I'll say hand on heart, when I was spirit today, one of the hour settings, I had no idea that I'd be among such illustrious company when the book came out. So, I'm in there alongside the likes of Val McDermott, who I ken has done Goud Breeks, the High Hedion's New Clays, or the Emperor's New Clothes. There's Elaine C. Smith's in there, Sheena Blackhall's in there, like say Thomas Clark's in there. And aye, Obody has very much got their own brand of Scots. There's Ichigo has like a wee bit of a Who's Stonart, but it's still which is fine. I mean, most languages here a Stonart and Stonart for publication, but nevertheless you still get the individual flavour and character of each individual screevers. Yeah, just the Scots that they use like geographically, but also just their voice in Scots, which is smashing.
So let's give ourselves a wee insight into what's in this book. Would you mind giving us just a wee reading fair in Scott's story?
Oh, of course. So I did the Nightingale. So in Danish, we're just going to have some bonus Danish in this one as well. So it's Nattergalen i dansk, or in Danish for those that are interested. So if you didn't ken the tale, it's and then a sort of mighty emperor of China, and he learns that among his many possessions is this precious bird called the Nightingale, but he's never seen it. And none of his high Hedgens or his courtines ken where to find it either. So it falls to a wee kitchen maid we'd like donners through the woods every day on our way to work in the palace to take them to it. So this is a wee bit of her taking them to find the Nightingale in the wood. So the courtiers followed the wee maid into the wood, scarting themselves on the brambles. They'd never seen brambles afore, for brambles were nae allowed in the emperor's gardens. Moo gaed our mother's coo. Ach, thon's the Nightingale, who sweetly it sings, they exclaimed to one another. Thon's just a coo mooing, the wee maid said. A goose honked, and they thought it was the Nightingale, until the wee maid told them it wasna. Are you quite sure, they speered, and the wee maid almost couldna help but giggle. A puddock croaked as they gaed past. Whit braw, thon mon beer, bird, the courtiers tell one another. Dawn was just a puddock, the wee maid telled them, and this time she couldna stop herself fae bursting out laughing at the thought of sic wheel weird men no kenning a thing about puddocks or geese or brambles or coos. She brought them to the tree where the Nightingale sat. Sing, the wee maid telled the Nightingale, and the toty wee bird sang sae awfy sweetly. Goodness, her sang is like teeny wee toty glass bells tinkling awa. The high Pandan Jerem smiled in delight. The nicht you shall sing for your emperor in his palace, he telled the bird. Well, my sang sounds better in the wood, the wee bird thought, but that nicht she sang in the palace. Yin free flowing such note followed another, until tears started to run down the emperor's cheeks, though he didna gae understand what for he was greeting. The Nightingale was a muckle success.
Oh. That's smashing. That is smashing. I've no doubt that the Nightingale will indeed be a muckle success with bairns all over Scotland once it's out. Thanks for sharing that with us. It sounds like a smashing book, and I can't wait to see it. I think we should be just, you can go and buy that straight for Ichiku. You can pre-order it. It comes out, is it the 24th of September?
That's right, I'll be out on the 24th.
No lying no. Are you quite excited by it, aye?
I am, I can't wait to get the hard copy. That'll be special.
Now, we're going to move along for there, that smashing project. Earlier on this year, 2020 is the 700th anniversary of the Declaration of Arbroath, and one of the things you were involved with as an oar setter was producing a new Scots oar setting of the Declaration of Arbroath, for which was kind of hosted by the National Library of Scotland. So first of all, tell us a wee bit about that oar setting. How did you come to decide to do the Declaration in Scots?
Aye, so first things first, I suppose, the Declaration itself was, of course, scríve in Latin, and we get the grand name of the Declaration now, but it was at that time a letter to the Pope for the High Hedgens of Scotland in Latin as the international leader diplomacy and the Kirk of the time. But as you say, we ken it nowadays in English translation only. But in the 1300s, back when this document went out, the most dominant lay language in Scotland, aside Latin as your more formal language, was Scots. And Robert the Bruce and his men, it would have been Scots that they spak, and Scots in the 1300s was well on its way to becoming the dominant national political official language of Scotland. So we ken that in the early 1400s, Scots replaces Latin as the language of recording the Act of the Scots Parliament, which doesn't come out of nowhere. So that's obviously big and on decades afore the Scots sort of growing in significance and status. So we just thought it would be, so Thomas Clark, another screever and also a good friend of mine, with this being the 700th anniversary year, we thought would be a good year to put it out in Scots.
So it wasn't just the declaration that you did. You also did a bit of public engagement around the declaration for the Wee Windies website, which is the Scots Lead portal at the National Library of Scotland. How come you think it's dead important to join Scots and history together in that sort of way, so folk can know just the Scots say something, but they can learn about their own history in Scots? How come that matters?
Aye, so I'll go back to some of my other languages again. I've done at uni, I did like the history of German, I've done historical, like Old Norse, history of Danish. And in that sense, it's merely an academic interest. It's interesting, it's cool, but nobody's questioning the status of modern Danish or modern German. So it's like a linguistic academic interest. That's not the case with Scots. We ken, sadly, that many folk still didn't ken that Scots is in fact a national language. At best, folk ding it down as a dialect, at worst, it's slang. So when it comes to Scots and researching its history and communicating about its history, it's far more nor just an academic project. It's about validating Scots today. And I think that to me, the best way to prove that Scots isn't slang or a dialect or bad English is, or I maybe shouldn't say this, but no, just something that was invented by nationalists a few years ago, which you sometimes hear as well, is the fact that it's got this centuries-old history and written tradition. And that proud history and pedigree of Scots should make Scots speakers today feel proud of what they speak. So that is absolutely my main aim when researching historical Scots, is really about the validation of Scots today.
Does Scots hate to be thorough to nationalism? Are you going to be bringing out Scots who are set in the Acts of Union?
Absolutely not. It shouldn't be thorough to nationalism. But I'm not going to duke off your question. I'll accept it often is, but that's a problem. That's a trochel to my mind. One of the things I'm quite fond of pointing out, for example, is that among the most Scots-speaking areas of Scotland, so Shetland and Orkney, they were also the 2 areas which voted the highest no vote in 2014. So there is nothing inherently nationalist or unionist about Scots. It is a language. It is a form of communication. And it can be spak by folk all across the political spectrum. It is spak by folk all across the political spectrum. So I didn't think it's in the interest of anybody to throw Scots to nationalism. It is a national language of the whole of Scotland.
So Wee Windies work, which has been ongoing for 2-3 years now, you've produced a lot of different bits of Scots history. Most recently, you've got an article up there that introduces folk to the Bruce. One of my favourite pieces of Scots literature. Tell the audience at home what the Bruce is and how come it's important, to start with.
Aye, so the Bruce is absolutely Scotland's national epic. It is to Scotland what the Odyssey is to Greece, for example, Beowulf is to England. And if we were speaking about the Declaration of Arbroath earlier, which is for 1320, and in nonsense, the Bruce is like the sequel or the Declaration 2.0. So we're louping for it a wee bit to the 1370s. Robert the Bruce is dead and gone, but his grandson is in poor in Scotland, and it's most likely that he's the one that commissions the Bruce about Robert the Bruce. So it is a national epic about the life of King Robert the Bruce, obviously totally bamming him up. It's very biased. It's like, the Declaration was pro-Bruce propaganda, so's the Bruce, the epic. It's 13,000 lines long. It's in Older Scots. It is the earliest scrivet document in Scots that we hae. And it is just objectively an absolutely magnificent epic, like a literal epic. It's absolutely smashing. It's exciting. You've got broadcast the characters. The Battle of Bannockburn is like the centerpiece, which Hollywood eat your hair out. Ken, what more do you want? Like wee nation getting bullied by its bigger neighbour, and then somehow they manage in this David against Goliath battle to win. So it's a true epic in every sense of the word, and it is also a magnificent, rich early Scots document.
For folk at home, how relate it to the Scots we're speaking now and the Scots you're here out and about in Scotland today? How related is that to this old Scots you see in the Bruce? Would your average Ken Dundonian out the windy, out on the Cleppy Road there, be able to pick it up and just leaf through it, or is it a bit more dense than that?
It's a bit more dense than that, but in the same way that like a modern English speaker wouldn't really get on very well with the Old Englishy Beowulf unless that you were specialising in that. But nevertheless, you definitely recognise words. So if you just pick up any page of the Bruce, you'll see words like bairn, you'll see heed, you'll see hame, you'll see fecht. You'll see like so that's CH, which obviously we hear in Scots all the time, and words like thocht. You see that CH sound all the way through. You've got your Scots vocab, which I've given some examples of there. You've got your T's on the end of verbs, so like tell instead of told with the D at the end. So you definitely see Scots markers, which are still in modern Scots today. So it's going back to that thing of why Scots is a language. We can trace it linguistically from the earliest times all the way through. We've got written sources for the earliest times all the way through, and across all registers. We've got parliamentary documents, we've got these sort of national epics, we've got poetry by kings, and then we've just got your mere everyday stuff. Like Scots just was and is a national language of all registers over centuries.
Smashing. Now, just for you watching at home, I'm seeing all your lovely comments come through under the videos. Hundreds of compliments for your screeving, Ashley. Loads of compliments about the things you're saying. We're going to have some questions at the end here. So if you are interested in asking any questions, pitting anything to Ashley, fire them into the comments in the Facebook, the YouTube, the Twitter. I'll pick them up and put them to Ashley just as we conclude in a few minutes' time. So you talked a wee bit about the vulnerability in modern Scots, the folk not even kenning it's a lead, even folk that speak it and all that. How much of your work is about bigging up the defences around modern Scots by saying, here, look, it was in the 1300s, our lead. Do you think that message is enough? If we give Abdi that message, is that enough to give them the confidence to attack Scots for it?
I hope so, because that's exactly what I'm doing it for. That is really, like I said before, it's not an academic project. It's not an interesting wee history thing. It is absolutely about the direct impact it has on the self-belief and self-worth of Scots speakers today. And I often feel that like our Scots language is like something we've got forgotten. We've got it hidden up in the attic and it's gathering stir, and we've just got this treasure chest of riches. So I went through Scottish education, nae Scots in primary school, nae Scots in high school, and then you're coming across things like the Bruce and going, I didn't ken we had this national epic in Scots. And if we can change that for future generations, then we hate to do that. And I'll just say it again, and it's especially in the Central Belt in particular, it's like the further down the social class you go, you often get more Scots. So it can often be the most disadvantaged bairns who didn't think they're good at school and aren't perhaps doing our wheel at school. And it is absolutely transformational for them to be told, you're really good at something and you're bilingual. And it absolutely transforms their academic achievement and their self-worth for the rest of their lives.
I couldn't agree more. That's a really smashing kind of ambition of yours to make sure that gets out there. So for the outside, the work you're doing, this new project for HQ, all the stuff you're doing with the National Library's Wee Windays website, you seem to be clearly part of a wider Scots renaissance. What does the wider Scots landscape look like for where you're sitting?
It looks pretty broad, I have to say. We started off with talking about the Hans Christian Andersen book, and as you said, that's just one among many. You had Ross on last week as well, bringing out original screeving in Scots for young adults. There is loads of stuff going on in Scots publishing. We're seeing it made in schools. Not enough as it should be, but we're seeing it made in Mayor. We're hearing it made in Mayor in Parliament. There seems to be more of just general interest. I mean, you'll blush in a wee second, Ali, but obviously you had your smashing documentary on the BBC earlier this year
I
as
certainly
well.
will, not a blush. It's still available on iPlayer, Rebel Tongue, quality watching. Carry on.
But yeah, there seems in it. Yeah, I didn't ken what it's come for, because there seems to be stuff going on from Shetland to the borders, and no necessarily connect it. I think that's the broad thing. There does just seem to be something in the water at the moment that folk all across the country, and whatever area it is they're working in, I'm happy that I can contribute for that more historic, using my history degree and my linguistics degrees for university. I can contribute that bit, but Obdi's doing their own bit in completely unconnected ways in many senses, but it does give the impression of this. There is this wider Scots Renaissance going on, and lang may it continue.
Aye, lang may continue indeed. Now, I'll just squeeze in two quick questions we've received online. So over Twitter, Daniel Sheeran has said, Christ, I didn't even understand the question. I'll go to Tam Clark's first. Ashley, what Bairn's book or story would you most like to overset into Scots?
Oh, you could have given me a heads up on that one. I'll have to think about that. Maybe something a bit mythier though, like maybe like his Dark Materials or something. Because we've got a lot of, like, you know, we've got the Roald Dahls in Scots, we've got like the Gruffle and the Mere Baby stuff. So something that's that more ostensibly a bairn's book, but actually quite adult as well. Yeah, maybe something like that. But I wish Thomas had given me a heads up so I could have thought about that one. I'll revise that.
And God, I've got a few here. What is your, so you've done a lot of the wee windies over the past. What next wee windy are you going to be working on?
Oh, that's very exciting. I've got one. I'm not going to say much about it because it is really exciting, and it is definitely going to be the best one I've done and the most exciting thing about Scots. I'm going to make a muckle claim here. I actually think it is going to be the most exciting Scots thing that's no been done before. We've not seen Scots in this way before. And it's coming out in February 2021. And I'll no say more than that now, but I am working on more. And after that one, I've got other ones planned. So there'll be many more wee windies to come.
Ashley, we'll hate to leave it there because we're already over time. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to get this Blether in with you. I'm awfully proud of what you're doing. I can't wait to read all the rest of the tales. And just keep doing what you're doing. It's smashing stuff. Smashing stuff. Cheers very much.
Cheers yourself.
And for Abdi at home, that is the end of this wee mini-series, A Blether Wee Heather. Cheers very much to Hands Up for Trad for hosting us, and to yous can't see him, but behind the scenes is our producer, Simon Toomier, who has been pushing all the buttons, making us work and making us go live, gathering together all your comments and questions and all that good stuff. So cheers to Simon there. Cheers as well to Dawn, Leslie and Ross Sayers, my previous guests. Their interviews are still available up on the Hands Up for Trad YouTube page, so feel free to check them out. That's all for me. Cheers very much indeed.